Hello and welcome to Lewis University's Career Discovery Podcast, where we discuss the dynamics of careers in the 21st century. I'm your host, Nina Nowaczyk, the Assistant Director of the Graduate Admissions Office, and today we are speaking with two guests, Dr. Lesley Page, who's the Associate Professor and Chair of the Organizational Leadership Program, and Ms. Geneva Reed, who's the President and CEO founder of the Freddie Mae Leverston Leadership Foundation. Welcome, Lesley and Geneva. Thank you for coming out. I'd like to start first with, let's talk about this Master of Arts in Organizational Leadership program. Lesley, we know that this program offers 5 concentrations, and one of them is the nonprofit management. How is the nonprofit management different from for-profit management?
Thank you so much, Nina. That's a great question and one that we hear pretty frequently from students. It is one of the more popular concentrations in our program as well. There are a couple key distinctions between for-profit and non-for-profit management organizations, and I'd like to take a minute or two to talk about some of those distinctions, which will help to highlight the differences. First and foremost, typically a difference we see between for-profit and non-for-profit organizations resides in the purpose of the organization. So for-profit organizations primarily have a mission to generate a profit. They do that by selling a product or delivering a service to a particular customer or consumer. In contrast, a nonprofit organization doesn't necessarily prioritize profits, but instead is dedicated to promoting a social cause or advocating for a particular standpoint. We see that as examples in areas such as assisting with basic human needs and rights, environmental needs, education, endangered species, etc. The services there strive to solve an important and potentially sometimes life-threatening problem, and therefore the success of nonprofits is often measured by the organization accomplishing its philanthropic mission. So that was an important distinction area talking about purpose. That leads to a conversation that typically arises in terms of the difference between for-profit and non-for-profit organizations when it comes to generating revenues. A significant difference between a for-profit and non-for-profit organization is in how each organization will generate those revenues. For-profit companies generally, as I was mentioning, sell a product or deliver a service. Non-for-profit organizations may still sell products. You might think about the Girl Scout organization, which of course sells their world-famous Girl Scout cookies, but their prime goal is not to generate revenue for sake of a profit as much as supporting the mission of the organization. And I'll uncover that a little bit more when I talk about 2 other important distinctions within nonprofit and for-profit organizations. One has to do with funding. When it comes to funding, for-profit organizations tend to fund their efforts through bank loans, investors, etc., and they generate revenue from the sales of the product or the service that they're delivering to the consumer. Non-for-profits, contrarily, take a different approach by seeking out private donations. This can come in terms of individual donations, corporate sponsorships, government grants, etc. And so there's really a difference in how the funding occurs in for-profit organizations as compared to nonprofit organizations. This has a lot to do with a difference in the audience that each organization serves as well. A for-profit organization will usually target an audience that is specific to the item that they are selling or producing, so either that product or the service. Nonprofit organizations tend to have a much broader and diverse audience. These are people who care passionately about the purpose or the mission of the organization and want to contribute so that they can see the success of that organization. So due to that, the audience in the nonprofit arena tends to include volunteers, donors, corporate sponsors, and even the general public at large. So there really is a different scope there. The last point of distinction to mention is in the leadership of organizations that are for-profit and non-for-profit. So for-profit organizations typically have leadership that have a stake in the financial success of the organization. So the profits or the revenue that's generated that we were talking about typically goes to serve the organization in terms of paying salaries, in terms of bonuses, and even in terms of paying shareholders. Non-for-profit organizations, of course by the nature of its name, are still trying to generate money in order for the organization to succeed. But that money goes into the success of the mission, how the organization can use that money to fund itself, to consider its place in achieving the mission that the organization has set out to do. And so while not concerned as much with the financial success, leadership does have to find a balance of the financial concerns alongside with the social and environmental issues that are usually that guiding light for the nonprofit organization.
Okay, great. Thank you. So, what do you think is the skill set that a nonprofit manager needs to develop these fundraising strategies, and what is considered a culture of gratitude?
Those are also good questions, Nina, so thank you. Fundraising is absolutely an important and critical part of any nonprofit organization. And so talking about that skill set is really important for us in our understanding of leadership as well as the success of the nonprofit organization. In terms of strategies that nonprofit leaders can use to develop fundraising efforts and have them succeed would lie in part in the strategic planning of the organization. So strategic planning becomes a very important part of any organization, but this certainly includes nonprofit organizations. So developing a plan that has 3-year, 5-year, 10-year goals are important for the organization to ensure that its mission is fulfilled as the organization moves forward. This is done in collaboration with volunteers, donors, and board members, and I'll talk more about that in a few moments. But some of the specific skill sets that relate to fundraising and creating this culture of gratitude become critical because fundraising is the ultimate source of revenue generation for a nonprofit organization. It's all about members of the nonprofit organization, those in leadership and management roles, building a collaborative relationship with their donors. And in doing so, they can create a culture of gratitude, remembering to be thoughtful, remembering to be courteous and collaborative when working with others in order to find people whose goals align with the nonprofit organization. So what are some of those specific skill sets? Well, as I was alluding to, showing integrity and being trustworthy are really important skills for nonprofit managers in terms of developing a relationship with their donors and being successful as a fundraiser. So is emotional intelligence, a topic we hear a lot about in the world of leadership. That's being aware of yourself, but also being aware of others around you. So as a potential fundraiser and member of a nonprofit organization, you want to listen to learn. You're trying to understand your donors and how they connect with your organization so you can build a very stable and two-way relationship where the donor feels some gratitude of being part of the mission of the organization. Also being politely persistent. It's not always easy trying to generate funds from donors. And so there is some follow-up that's needed. But part of emotional intelligence, again, is being aware not only of yourself, but of others. And so I would call that polite persistence, knowing when and how to lean on somebody and ask for money in order to support your organization, but being cognizant of when that goes too far. And so being polite in your efforts. Along with that would be being goal-directed, but still savvy. Of course, any fundraiser is there for a purpose, right? We are trying to raise money for the organization, but we want to be savvy. And what we want to do is talk about how that money will ultimately help support the organization and its mission, because that's what's bringing everybody together. And then it goes almost without saying, but high energy is very important for anybody working in a nonprofit organization so they can sustain the enthusiasm and the momentum that it takes to really engage a donor in that kind of conversation.
So CEOs of nonprofit organizations, they need to develop these partnerships with their board, because you mentioned the structure is with the board. What does that partnership look like?
Terrific question. So many times nonprofit organizations do have leaders that work within it, a CEO, and Geneva is going to tell us a little bit more about that. But a lot of the governance within a nonprofit organization happens with a governing body or a board that governs the nonprofit. So as I was mentioning earlier, having a strategic plan becomes critically important. The board of directors can help to ensure that that strategic plan is fulfilled, having goals that are short-term, 3-year, 5-year goals, and then long-term goals, 10 years out. What is the organization trying to achieve? How can the board help to reach those goals? The relationship with the board is really one that needs to be clearly defined. And so setting expectations becomes very important as well. As the nonprofit organization, what are you hoping to gain from each board member and their area of expertise? What are the expectations you have in terms of the frequency of communication or deliverables and goals from that board member? So building that very, very strong relationship based on the collaboration, the trust, and even maybe most importantly, the shared values of supporting the nonprofit organization and its mission.
Okay. So Geneva, we're thrilled that you're here with us as the president and CEO, founder of the Freddie Mae Leverston Leadership Foundation. Can you tell us a little bit about your foundation and how did the organizational leadership program that you took here at Lewis help you to create your own nonprofit?
Hi, Nina. Thank you and Lesley for allowing me to be here with you today. The nonprofit is the Freddie Mae Leverston Leadership Foundation. I founded it back in 2010 in honor of my grandmother. So that is the reason why it's bearing her name. But our primary focus is working with students in the arts, as well as with students specifically in the culinary arts and hospitality at my former high school, which is Simeon Career Academy. Now, the nonprofit concentration was really instrumental in building the organization because as we were building it out, I was also new into the program, which made it really great. And the nonprofit classes, specifically fundraising and the community service, specifically had me thinking about the purpose of the nonprofit, how to fund the nonprofit, and the community that we would serve. So one of the advantages was being able to ask questions of the professor during the classroom time and being able to take what I was learning in the classroom and be able to actually apply it as we were building out the organization.
That's great. So what are your goals now? You said that it was formed in 2010, 8 years later, okay, which is fantastic, by the way. What are the goals right now of your organization?
Well, our goals are constantly changing, and that's really based on the economics of what's going on and our funding, but I can say that things are going really great. Our primary three goals is really just to be an extension of the students' classroom learning within the culinary arts and hospitality by collaborating with professionals in the field of culinary arts and hospitality where they've either come into the classroom and conducted workshops or they've invited us out to events where we've been able to expand the learning for the students, which has been really great. Another goal we have is preparing the students for life beyond high school with a focus on college preparation, because one of the things that we have discovered is some of the students come home within that first year of college. They're not really prepared for it. And we just want to be able to provide them with workshops and have them think about college in a different way and what they need to do so that they'll be successful when they enter into college and be able to graduate from the 2-year, 4-year college of their choice. And our last goal is offering an annual scholarship every year to a student who is continuing in culinary arts or hospitality.
Well, Geneva, it's so great to have you here as an alumni from the program and as somebody who can speak specifically about the Master of Arts in Organizational Leadership. What are some of the key leadership skills you learned in the program that have helped you to achieve these business goals?
Really great question, Lesley. Many of the classes was really an opportunity to learn about yourself and your leadership skills, because a lot of the classes, each class offered an opportunity to take a different type of leadership assessment so that you have this well-rounded view of yourself as a leader in different capacity in terms of your leadership style, your leadership skills, how you lead, how you make decisions. And a big part of that was really self-awareness. So I believe that if I know more about who I am and as a leader, as a person, and how I make decisions, I'm able to better communicate that with the people personally as well as in the nonprofit. Another skill is really improving my effectiveness with interacting with people within a nonprofit and volunteers to ensure that everyone is on the same page and focus on achieving the mission of the organization. And lastly, which is a little bit close to improving my effectiveness, is really improving my communication and motivational skills, especially when speaking with the community and being able to have people support the mission and definitely being able to motivate people and find ways within the organization and the community to be able to really support what we're doing financially.
That's a nice tie back with what we were talking about in terms of fundraising. Would you say that the three main goals of a nonprofit manager are to engage people, build consensus, and to fundraise? Is there anything you might add to that or anything you'd like to elaborate on?
Well, I would definitely agree with you that those three are really critical, but I would want to start with what's been important, I think, for us and that has worked is being passionate about what we're doing and the community that we're serving and having a commitment. Because with a nonprofit in today's environment where there are so many nonprofits and you're new, even 8 years in, you're still relatively new in respect to larger, more established organizations. Having the passion in challenging times makes it easier for you to be able to focus on the mission, focus on the work that you're doing, and not losing sight of the community that you're serving to make sure that their needs are met. That's really critical. In terms of engaging people, you have to be able to, and that's part of being a leader, is creating this vision that others are willing to follow, who want to be a part of it, so that one is, it'll be sustainable, but you also want to engage people so that who will want to be a part of something that's bigger than themselves, will make a difference for others as well as for the community that they serve. In terms of building consensus, well, that's really critical within a board because there could be conflict. So you want to be able to make sure that you can really eliminate that conflict and you want to build a consensus so that everyone is operating on behalf of the organization. And the goal is to achieve the goals to meet the needs of the community. Fundraising. Fundraising is the most important thing, or one of the most important things, because you need to have fundraising strategies that must be aligned with the organization's missions and goals. The strategy must be clearly articulated so that everyone understands what it is they need to do to meet the needs of the community. And another key in terms of fundraising is making sure that the fundraising strategy is aligned with the mission so that you can communicate that with the community and they see that you have this tie-in to where what you're doing is matching up with your fundraising goals and it's not something different that's not clearly communicating. Fundraising is definitely really critical, and I think for smaller organizations such as ourselves, you really have to be able to think outside of the box and do some things that are different but are still aligned with your mission. And because we were working with primarily culinary arts students, our first big fundraising event turned out to be a cookbook that we created that was with recipes that were from all of the culinary arts students in the high school from their sophomore year, junior year, as well as the seniors. The seniors had the majority of the recipes, but it was like a really great opportunity to fundraise, and people were very, very supportive and impressed with the professionalism of the recipes that the students created, as well as tips on safety and hygiene that we also included inside of the cookbook. So that was a really, really great fundraising opportunity where we did something different, thinking outside of the box. Another thing that we've done in terms of fundraising where we're putting information out using social media as a way to fundraising, using Facebook and Twitter. And Facebook has some really good options out there now where you're able to allow for donations through your fundraising page, which is really, really great. And so we have things that the students are doing, any events that they're attending, culinary competitions. We're promoting all of that on Facebook and on Twitter. And we've had opportunities to be able to find some creative ways of fundraising when some of our students have graduated and they've reached out and said, I'm a sous chef at the Hyatt Regency in Chicago, and another one who branched out on his own and moved to California last year has done some personal chef for one of the NBA basketball players for the Pelicans, Marcus DeCousins. and where he's had an opportunity to be a personal chef. So when those opportunities present themselves, we promoted them on Facebook, we sent letters out to our donors, and we promoted it on Twitter, and we've received just immediate responses for donations in, because there's a tangible way that we have of being able to show them what we're really doing with the students and how the work that we're doing is actually impacting them. And so all of these things in terms of fundraising and leadership skills, everything, I mean, at least to me, I could say it was a really wonderful program, because I was actually able to really apply everything that I learned in the classroom to the nonprofit that we founded, and being able to starting in the program at the same time that we were forming the organization just really made a big difference. And being able to reach back and ask questions to the professors was really great.
Great, lots of exciting things going on. I'm at your foundation. That's wonderful.
Thank you.
Well, I just wanted to thank both of you for spending some time this afternoon talking to us about our Masters of Arts in Organizational Leadership, and specifically the nonprofit management concentration. If anyone is interested in obtaining more information about this particular program, you can always reach out to the grad admissions office, and our email address is grad@lewisu.edu. That's grad@lewisu.edu. Thank you.